Ahead on America This Week, I'm talking one-on-one with the White House Director of Strategic Communications, Alyssa Fara.
And then now you've got these allegations about Hunter Biden, and it seems like the mainstream media is just moving away from it and just glossing over it.
Special advisor to the president, Dr. Scott Atlas, returns. Senator Thom Tillis and Congressman Michael McCaul are also here. And you don't want to miss my interview with the mooch, Anthony Scaramucci. Former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon is back.
Joe Biden he's lied to the American people consistently. He lied to the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC.
Plus, he's a former Antifa member turned conservative activist. I'm talking with Gabriel Nadales. That and so much more right now in America This Week. The president is back out on the campaign trail after defeating the coronavirus. Judge Amy Coney Barrett spends the week in the hot seat, and early voting is well underway for many states. Thanks for joining us for another edition of America This Week. The countdown to Election Day is a nail-biter as 2020 continues to live up to its, wait, what reputation each passing day. It's time to wake up, America. While we're up to our eyeballs in the political season, Trump supporters are jumping up and down, screaming every time Joe Biden loses his train of thought.
You know, we have to come together. That's why I'm running. I'm running as a proud Democrat for the Senate. It's estimated that 200 million people have died, probably by the time I finish this talk.
He's losing it. He can't be president. He can't even remember his name. We all yell it out. I'm guilty of doing that, too. There have been no shortages of times I've highlighted a gaffe by the former vice president. Am I worried? You bet I am. And on the other sideline, the liberal media is constantly jumping up and down about President Trump not wearing a mask. And boy, were they upset when Trump said this.
One thing with me, the nice part. I went through it. Now they say I'm immune. I feel so powerful. I'll walk into that audience. I'll walk in there. I'll kiss everyone in that audience.
Is the media really worried, or are they just against Trump? I suspect they're genuinely worried about the message a maskless president is sending. I also believe they're petrified of the thought of 4 more years of Trump. The stakes are high, both sides are in a war and are aggressively canceling each other, a very dangerous monster game they're playing, which is growing bigger and badder as we approach the most consequential election in our lifetime. Trump supporters pointing fingers at Biden's mental state, and Biden folks calling Trump a virus super spreader. With all this emotion and infighting going on, as we plot and plan to destroy the other side on the airwaves, on the sports courts, and at the dinner table, we've lost sight of something way more important than who will occupy the White House for the next few years. We've lost track of what really matters. China is getting away with murder. 215,000 Americans have died, and over 1 million have died worldwide. This week, a resurgence in cases has pushed us over 50,000 in a day again. We're so busy digging up dirt and sound bites that support our version of who's responsible, Trump or Biden, we've lost sight of the real perpetrators, the Chinese Communist government. Coronavirus has ripped America apart at the seams. This is from Prom 2020? Is that what this is? I mean, this looks more like a scene from a horror flick than a real high school prom. Now, that's not Trump's fault. And closing down cities and economies and wearing your tube socks around your face hasn't slowed the virus down. And that's not Biden's fault either. In fact, with the benefit of 10 months of data, it's damn near certain this virus has to have been altered in a Chinese lab. No way this is your routine guy and girlfriend chow down on an uncooked bat turned into a virus. COVID-19 is far too deadly and far too persistent to be a routine virus. No, this has to have been accelerated in a lab. COVID-19 started in China. COVID-19 leaked from China. The cover-ups were exposed in China. Folks, this is a Chinese-born, bred, and spread disease that has ravaged the world. It's simply not okay to just fight this and hope it goes away, because if it does, you got to ask, when's the next COVID? COVID-21? Will COVID-24 be even deadlier? Who knows? But I do know this. If we don't hold China accountable, They will do it again. Now listen up. Somebody's got to address this virus with China. That somebody's got to hold China accountable for all the death and economic destruction this virus has inflicted on us all. While Trump banned Chinese citizens from coming to America in January, we now know for sure Joe Biden and his son Hunter were in bed with China on deal after deal after deal. The question is, who do you want to deal with China come January? Think about that before you pull a lever November 3rd. Alyssa Fara is the White House Director of Strategic Communications. Thank you for being here with us, Alyssa. This week there's some pretty explosive, New York Post has opened up some pretty explosive emails and pictures of the Biden family, Hunter Biden specifically, but also in it, very disturbing for me, there was some Ukrainian officials thanking Hunter Biden for getting access to the vice president at the time, Joe Biden, his father. What are you hearing? What do you know?
Oh, this is very concerning, and the Biden campaign's got some real questions to answer, and I hope that the mainstream media will actually pose those questions. The fact that, weeks after reports came out of Hunter Biden accepting a $3.5 million loan from the mayor of Moscow's wife, we still haven't gotten a basic answer from the campaign about this. And now these latest revelations, extremely concerning, and I really hope the mainstream media will cover them.
And there was so much going on in years past of President Trump's tape, the Russian collusion, this allegedly, quote unquote, hide your ears, kids, the P tape. And they went after that, and they continue to dig. Now there are these accusations and these pictures. If they're real, they're pretty damning. And again, no one's pointing the finger at people's lifestyles here. All I'm saying is if there's that much incriminating evidence and pictures, there is an ability to lean on the vice president at the time and maybe the president going forward, possible president going forward, for some sort of holding it up against him for a favor.
Well, and what's remarkable is that for years, anytime Russia came up in the context of President Trump, the media would seize to it, even if they were completely faulty and false, disproven allegations. And then now you've got these allegations about Hunter Biden, and it seems like the mainstream media is just moving away from it and just glossing over it as quickly as they can. So I hope that these questions get answered. But the other thing I would say is this president and his family have come out under extreme scrutiny since his time in office. Yet his, adult child, senior advisor Ivanka Trump, works for no salary, went away from her very lucrative business to come and serve the American public, to work on women's economic empowerment issues, to work on vocational training for underprivileged students. Yet you have the polar opposite with Vice President Biden's family, who have profited off of his time in office. I think it's a very stark contrast for the American people, and they can see, do you want people who profit off of office, come out of it millionaires, or somebody like President Trump, who was very successful before coming in and took a leave of absence to be able to serve the American public?
Alyssa, very quickly, only about a minute or so, a little bit more. Let's talk about the stimulus package, the further COVID-19 stimulus. The Republicans in the White House have come up from $1.4 trillion to $1.6, $1.8 trillion. Nancy Pelosi getting in fights with none other than Wolf Blitzer, who asked the pertinent questions. Isn't $1.8 trillion better than nothing at all? Because they seem to want to stay firm at their $2.4 trillion ask. Your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. Speaker Pelosi's in an untenable position. She and the Democrats have dug in at the $2.2 trillion when this White House and President Trump have agreed and moved up the number because we just want to get aid to hardworking Americans. We are committed. We want to extend those PPP loans to businesses. We want to get direct payments to the American people. It's Speaker Pelosi and no one else that is holding this hostage from the American people.
So why is that? What does the president believe is behind this? I mean, I know there was at one point it was going to be a deal, but then there was some sort of, ridiculous things baked into that deal. What is their issue? Is it just money, or do they want some other things in the deal?
A couple of things. I mean, I think to some degree it's partisan politics. The speaker doesn't want to hand a win to the president before the election day, but unfortunately what she's doing is leaving hardworking Americans in the lurch because of that. And then in addition to that, she's wanting significant, essentially, bailouts for poorly run Democrat cities, that these would be related to costs unrelated to COVID, just simply that have been mismanaged for decades, and wanting to work that aid into the stimulus package. And it's the president's position we can deal with that down the road, but it is not the time right now in a once-in-a-100-year pandemic to be dealing with years of systemically poorly run cities by Democrats.
Such a swampy place, that D.C. swamp. Pelosi trying to stick her little pet projects into some COVID relief where the American people are really, really struggling and need some relief. Alyssa Fara, going to say thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Can you hold up what you've been referring to in answering our questions? Is there anything on it?
That letterhead that says United States Senate.
That was Judge Amy Coney Barrett earlier this week, proving that she can handle any questions thrown at her by the Senate Judiciary Committee without crutches. North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis has been at those confirmation hearings and joins us now. Senator, thank you for being here, and we hope you're doing well following your own COVID-19 diagnosis. Sir, give us an assessment. She's handling herself, the judge is handling herself very well, under a lot of heat, especially, I was a little annoyed about Sheldon Whitehouse, some of his antics with this money. Tell us what do you think of her hearing so far?
I think she's demonstrated incredible poise and preparation. She's in there without any notes whatsoever. She was just this morning referring to a case of some of 600 that she's considered since she's been on the Seventh Circuit, and she had an encyclopedic knowledge of it. She has a knowledge of the Constitution. She has a knowledge of law. She's going to make a great justice.
Listen, I'm a conservative, and I've always pushed, and I think one of the biggest pushes for Donald Trump was to put conservative judges on the high court. I didn't love the way it went down with Brett Kavanaugh. I just didn't like his answering of the questions. She seems a far more difficult opponent to the Democrats than Brett Kavanaugh was.
Yeah, I also think that if you take a look at the way that Brett Kavanaugh was treated, he was in a very, very hostile setting. They're using different tactics to attack her. We're watching everything on social media, but I think that they're approaching this in a far more professional manner. But all the questions she's answered, and then they're asking her questions they know that she can't. They say that they don't want her to be an activist judge, and then they give her a long list of decided precedents from the Supreme Court that they want her to overturn. I think she's going to make a great justice. She's going to get voted out of committee, and she's going to get voted and confirmed for the U.S. Supreme Court.
Let's do that one step further. And when? By the election?
Oh, I certainly think so. We'll have markup on Thursday. We will vote her out of committee next week at the latest, and then she'll be eligible for full consideration of the Senate in the last week of October, and I expect that to be a successful vote for confirmation.
Very good. So you're in a head-to-head battle in North Carolina for that Senate seat. Tell us what's going on. Cal Cunningham had some problems earlier, I guess, in the month. What's the state of the race?
Well, I think that the more people in North Carolina know that a candidate, Cal Cunningham, was running on a message of truth and honor. He's been untruthful and dishonorable. And I think particularly when you're talking about a relationship with the husband of a combat veteran, and this is not years ago, this was weeks ago in his own home. I think it speaks to his credibility, and I think the people in North Carolina are going to reject him on November 3rd.
Very quickly, about a half a minute or so, the people, will they vote the same way? Will Trump win North Carolina? Will you win your seat, or will it be split, or the worst case, both of you lose?
Well, I think that we both win. We have a number of voters in common. We have some not in common. At the end of the day, I think the president wins North Carolina. He wins the electoral map that he needs to get reelected. And I carry the day on November 3rd.
We're going to leave it right there. I've always circled North Carolina. It's a must-win. It's an absolute must-win. For me, the road to the White House goes through North Carolina. Thank you very much, Senator Thom Tillis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Eric.
Good to see you again. Let's bring in Texas Congressman Michael McCaul. Thank you for joining us, sir. The McCaul report hits China pretty hard, sir. We've talked about that in the past. I'm on board with you, but I recently learned that Xinhua, the Chinese government, has pushed back very aggressively to your report. What's their problem with your report?
Well, I think we hold them responsible. It basically reads like an indictment against the Chinese Communist Party. In the report, The Origins of COVID-19, We talk about the silencing of the doctors, destruction of lab samples, and denial that it was human to human, where it could have been contained as an epidemic, and then because of their recklessness became a global pandemic. And Eric, we translated this document into Mandarin at the State Department and then penetrated their firewall, getting it into mainland China, where it went viral. And it ended up with President Xi's spokesman denouncing the report, and then a full entire television hour dedicated to debunking the McCaul report. We've been raised probably 10 times in Beijing, articles with their propagandists attacking the China task force and me personally.
Congressman, did you go? You mentioned recklessness. I'm using your word, recklessness on the part of the Chinese government. Does the report actually find out if there was any sort of effort to amplify the virus?
Well, with respect to the lab, I think it's very likely it could have been leaked accidentally, though. We don't think it was weaponized out of the lab. But we'll probably never know, Eric, because they destroyed all the evidence. This is a complete cover-up and whitewash of the COVID-19 virus. And so we want to get to the truth. They fear their own people more than they fear anything. And I think getting the truth to the people of China, mainland China, is their greatest fear.
So tell us a little bit about why it seems like with all these COVID deaths that are reported around the world, it seems like China has almost none or very small numbers.
I think their death rate is completely underreported. If you look at the number of urns that have been ordered, particularly out of Wuhan, you can calculate that the death rate is much higher. This is very, it's very much their tactic to try to cover up and whitewash information. It's embarrassing for them. Shame is a real thing for them. This is why they tried to, Eric, steal out of MD Anderson Texas Medical Center all this biomedical research, including research and development for the vaccine itself, because they would love to save the world from the very virus that they produced.
Now, there was allegations or accusations that the Chinese government was hoarding PPE as the virus was spreading. Any truth to that?
That's all true. They nationalized 3M and GM in mainland China and then hoarded the PPE, knowing that the pandemic was going to break, would not export it to the United States. This is why we got to get off their supply chain on both medical and technology. And then they price gouged Europe, claiming to be a savior at the same time.
Congressman, about 20 seconds or so, how do you hold China accountable going forward?
Not going to raise taxes, just like Obama couldn't raise taxes.
He said he was. He said he was going to roll back Trump's tax
Doesn't
cuts.
matter about what he's saying. You know, politicians are lying when their lips are moving. It doesn't matter what he's saying. There's nobody that lies more than your guy. Your guy's like the Gatling gun of lying. I mean, you've never seen lies like Trump.
Well, we do know, Anthony. You and I have been around a long time. You and I both know that Democrats raise taxes. Democrats raise taxes. Come on, Anthony. It's been historic. It's been decades of this.
I love you to death, but you never let me answer the questions. Okay, number one, there'll be way more fiscal stimulus, which will boost the lower and middle income people under a Biden plan. Number two, and a super important number two, is that you have a tax increase, okay, never coming. I mean, just like in the Obama situation, the tax increase did not happen. They couldn't do it because the economy was too weak. And the third reason is you're going to have some level of a return to normalcy, and we'll get our arms around the science of this disease rather than all of the science denying of the Trump administration and the ridiculous ideas around herd immunity. And so President Trump has made the country weaker, sicker, and poorer, and he's been a disaster as president. And so this guy at least will be a return to normalcy. And by the way, we got to get the TPP done. If you really want to hand check China and Asia, you got to get the TPP.
Let me do this. I ran out of time, so I'm going to address your 1, 2, and 3 very quickly. Number one, you talk about we need more fiscal stimulus. That's socialism. That's government taking some people's money and giving it to others. You're out of your mind. You've never been for that. Now you are. Number two, tax increases aren't going to happen, even though Joe Biden is opening his mouth saying, I will repeal President Trump's tax decreases. But you say that's not really going to happen. Number three, you talk about science. Junk science is what we've lived with. Anthony Scaramucci, my good friend, you're going to owe me dinner in 3 weeks. Anthony Scaramucci, everybody.
It's your show, babe. All right, but I'm going to be eating a lot of food at that dinner. I just want to make sure you know that, okay?
You got it. The race is on to develop an effective vaccine against the coronavirus, and a major push behind the effort is President Trump's Operation Warp Speed. Joining me now is Dr. Scott Atlas, who's on the President Trump's coronavirus task force and is a special advisor to the president. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Atlas. Honored to have you here. Operation Warp Speed, give us a sense on what this is. I read it's going to be pushing forward to 100 million doses of a vaccine by the end of the year. Is that the goal?
Yes. Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me. Well, I mean, everything is proceeding, as far as I know, without a hitch, and that means that the data is being accumulated. The Data Safety Monitoring Board has to look at it, but in the meantime, Operation Warp Speed is set up so that manufacturing is concurrent, regardless of the, the work of getting the data done, getting the clinical trial done. There's been over 70,000 subjects now entered into the first two vaccines that are being evaluated. And of course, there has been no report of any kind of safety issue, by the way, which is very good news for everybody. We're waiting to see the efficacy side and also, of course, the readout of the safety in detail. But you're right, the plan is, and there will be, as far as everyone is understanding, 100 million doses by the end of the year. There will be enough vaccines generated to have available a vaccine for every priority high-risk person, every first responder, all of the typical sort of high-priority people, no later than January. And of course, as has been said many times, that the vaccine will be being delivered within 24 hours after its approval. So things are going well. I think there's another very important part of Operation Warp Speed, which I just want to make sure I bring up to everybody, and that is that the drugs, the treatment for the disease, there are two emergency use authorizations that have been submitted by the Regeneron drug and the Lilly drug, and they are being evaluated. I don't know any update on their evaluation, but that's very good news, because these are drugs that prevent people who are early on from needing hospitalization.
Mm-hmm. Doctor,
I don't know if you've heard the preliminary data, but it's very promising.
Doctor, so we watched the president leave a hospital, some to the dismay of the left, and get back on the campaign trail. Some of the drugs were experimental, some of the drugs were not approved. He got approval to take them. Will the cocktail of drugs that seemed to get President Trump back on his feet very quickly, will that be available, that concoction, the cocktail recipe, will that be available to the American people?
Sure. These are the drugs that I mentioned, the Regeneron and the similar drug by Lilly. These are sort of monoclonal or polyclonal antibody drugs. But the point is that they are submitted for emergency use authorization. It remains to be seen. Of course, they have to be approved. But the president said something very important when he said that he guarantees personally that the drugs will be available ASAP to every senior who needs these drugs, free of charge. So, I mean, there's an accelerated, pathway, of course. It has nothing to do with accelerating the safety issue, but the bureaucracy has been really sort of eliminated. I mean, we're in a pandemic here. It's not a regular situation, and everyone has to use common sense, but also the president's, his whole Operation Warp Speed is to accelerate these things, and they will be available, as soon as absolutely possible, pending their approval for emergency use authorization. So we're optimistic about that. Of course, it has to be evaluated.
Very quickly, sir, less than a minute or so, Warp Speed gives people a concern that may be pushed too fast. We're not pushing the FDA to approve something that isn't completely safe prior to making sure it is safe.
No, absolutely not. I think this is really an abuse of public power, really, to have people in the political arena or otherwise cast doubt on the safety. There's no safety measure that's been cut whatsoever. The U.S. has the safest drug and vaccine development in the world. There is no cutting of any corners with that. There's no pressure to do that. The pressure is the pandemic, nothing to do with politics. Everyone, I'm going to take the vaccine as soon as it's available. I can guarantee you when I can get it. And I think it's really heinous to make people afraid of something that could save their lives. I think nothing will be mandatory, of course. There will be no mandatory vaccine, but to get it available is a crucial step in ending the threat from the pandemic. There's no question about that.
We're going to leave it right there. Dr. Scott Atlas, thank you very much for your time. Next, it's an interview I promise you'll want to stick around for. I'm talking with Steve Bannon. That's just ahead. And you don't want to miss my upcoming town hall with President Trump next week. I'll sit down for a one-on-one hour exclusive with our commander-in-chief in Pennsylvania. He'll also answer your questions about topics important to you, the voter. Go to your Sinclair station's website to see where it will air in your city. America This Week has also reached out to the Biden-Harris campaign with a similar offer every single day, and we have yet to receive a response. Mr. Biden, if you're watching, we know you are, the closer we get to the election, the smaller this window gets. Come join us. Election 2020. The rancor. The constant controversy.
Nobody likes me. It can only be my personality, that's all.
The debate.
I just want to make sure.
The issues.
We won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week.
America's fastest growing political show. Points out how rough and tumble politics shape opinion in every region in our country. We tell American stories, stories that touch our people, determine our politics, focus on the future of America.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week. Election 2020. The rancor. The constant controversy.
Nobody likes me. It can only be my personality, that's all.
The debate.
I just want to make sure.
The issues.
We won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week. Let's get right to the interview. Joining me now is former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon. Bannon, you broke some big news this week. Tell us about it. What'd you find out? China Bidens.
Well, listen, it was about Hunter Biden, this trove of information that's come to us at the War Room, Rudy Giuliani over a show at WABC, but it's up on the New York Post in an exclusive, and it talks about the extensive financial relationships that the Biden family has and Joe Biden has with foreign governments and companies controlled by foreign companies. There's a lot more that's going to come out throughout the week. Right now, it's talking about how he lied. Joe Biden's lied to the American people. He's consistently said he didn't know anything about Burisma, he didn't know anything about executives in the Ukraine, and it's just a lie. There's emails that show that Joe Biden took meetings, right? He took meetings with these guys set up by his son and set up by his son's business partners. So, you know, Joe Biden he's lied to the American people consistently. He lied to the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC. Mike Allen over at Axios consistently lied, and now he's being outed for his lies. So I think he's first off got to just come back, and I think the media's got to take the lead here to hold him accountable for these substantial lies he's done. Number one. Number two, I think we got a national security problem. National security problem is Biden and his family are compromised. You know, everybody's wanted to look the other way on this, and now you have to focus on this with 3 weeks left to go. Is Joe Biden compromised by foreign governments and entities, companies owned by foreign governments? The last. And what's most shocking about all this, Eric, is that the FBI has had this information since the fall of 2019. I think since December, they've had the information. If they had come forward, President Trump wouldn't have been impeached. I think this recalls an immediate investigation of the FBI. You've got to get the FBI in front of, hey, how did you have this information and not come forward with it? Did the Bidens get a special deal and President Trump and the people around President Trump don't? So I think on three levels, Biden lying, number two, the national security issue of Biden family being compromised, and number three, the FBI literally looks like protecting Biden and his family. So I think that I think that things are going to blow up the next couple of days.
And again, Steve, help me out here. I mean, there's some really, really disturbing images of Hunter Biden that the Post had published, one of them with a crack pipe. Are we sure these are legit emails? Because if they are, you're right, there could be quite a bit of compromise going on between the Biden family and the American people and the Ukrainians.
The New York Post and their lawyers went through all this. The photograph, look, it's a massive library of photographs, a massive library of videos, a massive library of audio, and massive library of text and emails. It's a treasure trove of information. On family networks, I can't talk about how exactly awful all these videos are, but let's say there's substantial drug use and substantial sexual depravity is what I would say it. So it's all of that will come out over time. But this shows you, and by the way, I'm sure foreign governments have this stuff. Hunter's not just the sole problem. The problem goes all the way to the top. It goes to Biden's brother, James, and it goes to Joe Biden himself. So Joe Biden's got to answer for this. You can't put it off on Hunter. He's clearly a drug addict. There's substantial. The New York Post has a story of him with a crack pipe, has a photograph of him with a crack pipe. There's a lot more than that. But this goes back up to Joe Biden. Joe Biden has been able to slough this off and not be held accountable by the mainstream media. Now they got the evidence there, and he's going to have to deal with it.
Steve, I want to bring you back as this story unfolds, because it's going to be an important story going into the election. Very quickly, Steve, 2016, you were there. At this point in time, a couple weeks before the election, they had Hillary. The polls had Hillary winning. Tell us the similarities and differences between 2016 and what you're seeing in 2020.
Well, I think it's very different. 2020, because of the CCP virus, COVID-19, I think it's very different. I would tell people, number one, don't get worried about all these polls. The national polls are showing 12, 14 points down. We were the same way after Billy Bush weekend. I would focus for your audience. The key thing here is low propensity voters. This is going to be won in battleground states by voter turnout. This is not a persuasion. And I've said this from the beginning, this is not a persuasion election. This is a turnout election. That's why I think chasing suburban moms has been a waste of time. And I've been adamant about that. What you should do is you've got Hispanics, Latinos, working class black males. You've got a deep base, I think, out there of people that have benefited from President Trump's economic program. I would be all over that. I would be going after low propensity voters. A great article in Politico today that said this is going to come down to low propensity voters in these 8 to 10 battleground states. Mm-hmm. And right now, I think the Trump campaign and the ground game with Bill Stepien, Jason Miller, I think they're focused on what is absolutely correct and needs to be done. Look, I'm not a big fan right now of the rallies. Right. The rallies worked in 2016. They were brilliant. Right now, I think President Trump's got to be leveraging digital. He's got to be now in a focus of get out the vote, because what's going to happen is Trump's going to have a massive turnout on election day, and the Democrats are going to have this mail-in vote. We're going to have a huge fight, Eric, for the coming weeks after this campaign.
Steve, you're right. That is going to be a big thing. We're going to have to keep our eye on it. Steve, I ran out of time, but I really want to bring you back soon. Next week, we have President Trump himself for an hour, but the week after, that'll be the week before the election. Love to maybe sit down and see what else you found out. Everyone, Steve Bannon, thank you very much for your time.
I love the show. Come on anytime.
Thank you, Steve. Up next, he was a member of Antifa before switching sides. You don't want to miss my conversation with Gabriel Nadales. And for weeks now, I've been showing you the uphill battle this country faces against the deadly opioid epidemic. And there's a reason for that, because I believe we can win this fight. Each and every day, our brave men and women work to stop drug cartels in their tracks. Criminals try to bring that poison across our southern border or by sea at our ports. They even go so far as sending drugs like coke, meth, and fentanyl through our mail. And every day, we win a little bit in the fight to stop these illegal drugs from getting into our communities and killing our children. The reason we win is because of you. To help in this battle, donate to the Eric Chase Foundation. That's ericchasefoundation.org. Every penny goes towards fighting the opioid epidemic, and I promise you, it's money well spent. Each week, the top donors will get a signed copy of my book, Wake Up America. Thanks so much to everyone who's donated so far. We can and we will win this fight. Election 2020. The rancor, constant controversy.
Nobody likes me. It can only be my personality, that's all.
The debate.
I just want to make sure.
The issues.
We won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week.
America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, points out how rough and tumble politics shape opinion in every region in our country. We tell American stories, stories that touch our people, determine our politics, focus on the future of America.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week. Election 2020. The rancor. The constant controversy.
Nobody likes me. It can only be my personality, that's all.
The debate.
I just want to make sure.
The issues.
We won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week. He was once a member of Antifa and is now a conservative activist who just released a new book, Behind the Black Mask, My Time as an Antifa Activist. Gabriel Nadales, thank you for being here. Sir, you were Antifa. Let's listen to Joe Biden. I want to hear Joe Biden talk about Antifa.
This is a left-wing
white supremacist. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you gotta be
not
kidding.
militia.
Well, let's ask one of the former Antifa members himself. Were you an idea or were you an organization?
Well, honestly, Joe Biden needs to face the facts because here are the facts. It is not an idea that for the last 3 months, Rose City Antifa has been orchestrating a riot every night in the streets of Portland. And it is not just an idea that in those same riots, an Antifa terrorist gunned down a Trump supporter in the street. Antifa is just undeniable, and every time that Joe Biden keeps to deny its existence, it's only going to get worse. So Joe Biden, if you continue to deny this, one day Antifa will come for you.
Gabriel, who finances Antifa?
So as far as funding, a lot of people think that it may be like George Soros or something like that, but it's not. A lot of Antifa chapters are actually very self-funded or within their own community. And it's actually a lot more dangerous to think of this because then it reveals that there are people out there who are motivated to destroy America as opposed to just getting paid for this kind of stuff. And it's an incredibly pressing problem that's continuing to grow.
Give me a kind of a profile of a typical Antifa member. What makes someone decide they want to become an Antifa member? What is it in their life, their background, their school, their socialism? What's happening to people that say, I'm going to pick up and start throw rocks and maybe shoot someone because I need to be part of this cause?
Well, a lot of the people in Antifa, they feel marginalized. They feel like they don't belong. I can tell you from personal experience that I grew up with a lot of left-wing television, specifically Univision and Telemundo, who made me believe that America was my enemy. Not only that, but I also had a lot of teachers in middle school and high school who taught me the same ideas, anti-American ideas. After a while, all these seeds were planted in my head, and I became a liberal activist. But then it became easy to take that next step and become an Antifa activist because I already hated America since I was preconditioned to believe this as I was growing up. And I can tell you that a lot of people in Antifa, they hate America. That's really what they're standing against. Antifa does not stand for something. It stands against American values.
It really blows me away. You know, the Antifa, anti-fascist, their moniker makes you think that they're trying to open up, shed light on things. But they just had a day of rage in Portland this week, and they declined to allow cameras, which means they're doing things exactly what they're supposed to be fighting against. Does it not? Am I missing this?
No, I mean, they're engaging in the same type of fascist tactics that they're supposed to be fighting against. But I mean, let's just look at what happened in Portland, I believe on Monday. They were supposed to be fighting against that fascist Columbus, right? Well, they went to Portland and they tore down a statue of Abraham Lincoln and President Roosevelt, two of the greatest American presidents that we've had. And I mean, one of them ended slavery, and yet he is the fascist. Again, Antifa is not about fighting true fascism. They just want to destroy American history. And we can see that every single day just by following the riots.
Gabriel Nadales, again, former Antifa member, now conservative. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Let's hear from both sides of the aisle here. University of Maryland lecturer Dr. Jason Nichols is back, member of the President's National Security Education Board, host of America First on Salem Radio, and Sinclair Media contributor Dr. Sebastian Gorka, and Sinclair political commentator Amisha Cross. Guys, I want to bring this to your attention. This week, I saw something I never thought I'd see before. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, giving Wolf Blitzer a hard time, actually saying that Wolf is in the tank for Republicans. What gives, Jason?
Well, I actually was very proud of Wolf Blitzer for doing his job as a journalist and pushing a member of government. I think one of the things that we've seen on both sides of the aisle is they get cozy with certain media. We know that the president claims victimization from any media that doesn't exactly pat him on the back. And I was, a little disappointed that Nancy Pelosi actually went after Wolf Blitzer that way for asking her difficult questions that many Americans want to know the answer to. And it wasn't the most difficult question in the world. She could have easily stated the fact that, they want more and they believe that Americans deserve more. I don't think Wolf Blitzer was in anybody's camp, just like Chris Wallace. I think they were doing their job as journalists.
Very good. Sebastian, here's what the topic was. The topic was that the Republicans have come up from $1.4 trillion for COVID relief to $1.6 to $1.8, and Pelosi's team has decided to hover at $2.2 trillion. Sebastian, Wolf rightly asks, isn't $1.8 trillion better than nothing at all? And she pushed back. Sebastian.
It's incredible. Like a broken clock is right twice a day. CNN, the Clinton News Network, finally did an act of random journalism. This is who Nancy Pelosi is. She's Marie Antoinette resurrected, the woman who's proud of her $100 a gallon ice cream that she keeps in her $23,000 fridge. Said, what are you talking about, Mr. GOP talking points? This is today's Democrat Party. She dripped arrogance. She doesn't care about her so-called constituents. It's about power, and pork for California, which, by the way, just happens to be run by her nephew, Newsom, Gavin Newsom as well. So it's all about Chicago-style politics. It's money, it's graft, it's grift, and it should disgust American voters. Down-ticket GOP is the way to go.
And Amisha, let me add one thing besides the money that Sebastian points out. Maybe it's just Nancy Pelosi refuses to give the Trump White House or President Trump a win this close to the election.
Well, one of the things that I think was problematic in that interview, and Jason pointed out a little bit of it earlier, was that there was a question that was asked that she could have easily responded to in kind and gotten her point across. Typically, Nancy Pelosi is extremely tempered. She's somebody who understands and calculates a lot of her moves and motivations in alignment with where the party is going. I think that in this realm of, we do have an election cycle just around the corner. Many people have already voted. It's one of those situations where Americans, hardworking Americans who have been out of work for months now, are looking for some type of reprieve. And what Nancy Pelosi should have done was gone on and talked about why she didn't think that this package was what it could be, why she was holding off. And I think that she could have made that argument. But Wolf Blitzer, to his credit, did exactly what he is supposed to do, push down and ask the tough questions, because those are questions that the American public wants to know as well. Just like when they pushed President Trump, when he had originally said that he wasn't interested in signing anything until post-election. This is the same type of questioning that I think that Nancy Pelosi should also have to face.
Very quickly, guys, keep answers concise. Should Nancy Pelosi be replaced as Speaker of the House? I'll start with you, Jason. Keep it to 15 seconds if you don't mind.
No, I think Nancy Pelosi has done a very good job. She's the person who got health care for 20 million Americans. I think that earns you more time as Speaker of the House. So I believe she's doing a good job. One bad interview doesn't spoil her entire career and her entire record.
Sebastian?
I don't usually do this. Let me try and answer that with some Democrat talking points. She's old, she's white, she's corrupt, she's got to go.
Amisha.
Nancy Pelosi has been the most effective Speaker of the House this nation has ever seen. She absolutely should go again.
I don't know. You know, I look at this, and there are people who are really struggling, you guys, and they're really struggling out there because they're being laid off. They're working in restaurants, they're working in bars, they're working in airline industries, they're being furloughed, they're being fired. And for Nancy Pelosi to say that $1.8 trillion, she'd rather take nothing, as Sebastian points out, while she sits in front of her $20,000 refrigerators eating her $100 ice cream, is just tone deaf. Guys, we're going to have to leave it right there. Jason Nichols, Sebastian Gorka, and Misha Cross, thank you as always. Election 2020. The rancor. The constant controversy.
Nobody likes me. It can only be my personality, that's all.
The debate.
I just want to make sure.
The issues.
We won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week.
America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, points out how rough and tumble politics shape opinion in every region in our country. We tell American stories, stories that touch our people, determine our politics, focus on the future of America.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week. The latest Electoral College map from Real Clear Politics has Joe Biden leading President Trump 226 to 125, leaving 187 electoral votes up for grabs. Joining me now is the co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics. Tom, great to have you on a couple of weeks before the election. And we put that map up because this is the most recent map. There's clearly a lot of wiggle room. No one's at that 270 needed to win the election. But what I also wanted to do, Tom, is I wanted our producers to put up the 2016, your last 2016 map before the election, and it has an overwhelming, resounding Clinton-Kaine win over Trump-Pence. They were wrong. What's going on? Are you right or wrong this time?
I mean, if you look at that map, Eric, and if you didn't know anything about the 2016 race and you just were shown that map the day before the election, it had Clinton winning 272 to 266. I think anybody would characterize that as a very close race. Trump only needed to flip one state. He ended up flipping three. The problem is that that's not how that race in 2016 was characterized to the American people. For weeks leading up to that race, you couldn't turn on the TV or your computer or the radio without hearing a supposed expert talking about how the race was in the bag for Hillary Clinton, 97.256%, with this certainty, this degree of faux statistical certainty. And these weren't insignificant individuals. It was David Plouffe, Obama's former campaign manager. It was Sam Wang, Princeton University professor, well-respected individuals who really missed the boat on that election, because that race was a lot closer than I think the public was led to believe by the experts.
Hey, Tom, listen, I'm a big fan of Tom Bevan. I'm not a big fan of polls, especially national polls, because they've been so inaccurate. What I do like is we're looking at a map and finding the path. And the path for Donald Trump this year seems to be, it almost has to be Pennsylvania. If it's not going to be Pennsylvania, I'm talking about the ones we already know about: Texas, Florida, Ohio going to Trump. I'm talking about the ones that are up for grabs, the battleground. It has to be Pennsylvania. It should be North Carolina. If not, he's got his work cut out for him. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, really, if you think about it this way, Trump won 306 electoral votes last time. So he can lose, right, 36 electoral votes and still win with 270 electoral votes. So the question is, where can he lose? And you start with Florida. It's 29. I mean, if he loses Florida, his path to 270 almost entirely disappears. So, but if you assume that he's going to win Iowa, and Ohio, which are competitive this time around, and as you mentioned, North Carolina and Florida. Then you're left with 4 states really: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. He could lose 2 of those 4 and still win the election. And I think the Trump campaign feels pretty good about Arizona. So then, he could lose 2 of the 3 of those upper Midwest states and still win re-election, especially if it's Pennsylvania with 20 electoral votes. If it's Wisconsin with 10, then you're talking about, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district and Maine's 2nd congressional district. You could be in the neighborhood of a 269 tie, which, it is 2020. So maybe that's most likely outcome. I'm going to refresh our audience's memory and maybe others who watched it on Fox. I was there at 11 o'clock at night on election night, and I saw the path. It was done. Donald Trump was your next president. They didn't want to hear it. Fox didn't want to call it, and they made me now. But I was on air calling it, and it was all because I saw North Carolina, and when North Carolina went, it was over. I don't care what the math was. It was going to be a Republican president, even if it was a tie. And hopefully we don't have that same situation. And by the way, New York Times at the time was calling the winner, Clinton, 92% chance of winning, and they were all wrong. Tom Bevan, always good to have you. We'll get you on again right before the election. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Eric. There's no excuse to miss an episode of America This Week. Just set your DVR. Go to facebook.com/AmericaBowling, all one word, for a complete list of times and cities. All of our shows are also on YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel to see our shows and rewatch key interviews. Share them with your friends. Election 2020. The rancor. The constant controversy.
Nobody likes me. It can only be my personality, that's all.
The debate.
I just want to make sure.
The issues.
We won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week.
America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, points out how rough and tumble politics shape opinion in every region in our country. We tell American stories, stories that touch our people, determine our politics, focus on the future of America.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week. TikTok, the election countdown is on. Remember, next week, I'll be sitting down with President Trump for an exclusive America This Week town hall in Pennsylvania. If you have a question for the president, post a video to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AmericaBowling, all one word. We could use your question during the town hall. Go to your Sinclair station's website for details. And that's it for us tonight from the D.C. Swamp. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night, everybody.